Hi, and welcome back to the Dark Pixel Podcast. My name's Mike.
I'm Landon.
My name's Kason.
We run YouTube channels called Dark Pixel and Dark Pixel Gaming. If you'd like to see our...
And Food Fetch.
Oh yeah, Food Fetch as well.
Channel called Food Fetch.
I actually forgot to log into that. I tried to get into it, and I do not remember.
Dang it.
It's abandoned.
At least the videos are up.
Anyways, we do filmmaking at Dark Pixel. We do game analysis at Dark Pixel Gaming. This podcast goes on Dark Pixel Gaming. We have topics to talk about. Most of them come from you, so look forward to your topics being talked about. But Persona 5 is coming out in Japan. We're getting a copy in Japanese, but Famitsu gave their review. We'll talk about Famitsu reviews and what we think of them. A lot of with PAX happening, there was kind of a lot of stuff I saw online for Paper Mario Color Splash, the new one. A lot of people are upset that it has moved so far away from its RPG roots. Kason just did a review on Paper Mario 64.
That's right.
He's a big fan, so we'll get some thoughts on where we, what we think of where the series is headed. And, it's not RPG.
We'll tell you how
anymore.
many times we've thumbed down Paper Mario videos on the
With
internet.
all 18 channels. Unsubscribe from Nintendo. Okay, so aside from that, we might just quickly talk about the PlayStation Slim. Like, the whole fetching thing has been in video form, like, taken apart, and we basically know exactly what it is. And more so than talking about, like, what we think about the PS4 Slim, because it's just the PS4, but it's small. I think maybe talking about, like, the nature of, like, online leaks and how companies cannot keep anything secret anymore is just crazy, and give a quick thought on that. Then we're going to jump into your topics. Infinite View wanted us to talk about RPG battle systems, how they've all trended away from turn-based into more of this action-oriented sort of system, and how that changes RPGs. We have a lot of thoughts on that. I'm going to do a full video on that eventually, so but we'll give some kind of like preliminary thoughts. Mel Ariza wants to know if we could pick any game from our childhood to be remastered or be remade, which game would we choose and why? Young Cream wants to know which characters and worlds would you like to see most in Kingdom Hearts 3? I think it's a great question. Nice. Nothing really. Are there any scenes in video games that stood out as powerful to you? There's probably very many of them, but we'll try and narrow down some of our favorites.
Yep.
Okay, Persona 5, again, let you guys know, we ordered a Japanese copy. So that game doesn't come out for Western territories until next year.
Yep.
But we'll have a copy here in a week or so. And let us know in the comments how exactly you'd like to see that covered, because I know that a lot of people aren't going to want to see spoilers.
Doing a live play is going to be difficult.
And I'm actually wondering if we would get like a strike or something if we tried to live stream a game.
For the Japanese version?
Yeah, is that going to be a problem?
I mean, people
in our own territory. Yeah, they would. Right? Like, I don't know.
I see what you mean. I think YouTube's global. I don't know.
I seem to remember that Dark Souls 3 streamers had problems when they were trying to stream the Japanese copy that came out earlier than the Western.
Would that also hold for if we did a review or something like that?
I don't know. I got to look into that. But in any case, would you even be interested in a live stream of the Japanese version?
I'm thinking at the very least,
slow.
Yeah, at the very least, I want to do a video on like thoughts and impressions, and then I want to actually have a review of the Japanese version of it up before the American version is out.
Yeah, I think having a review of it is a good idea for sure. Thoughts, impressions, really good. But do you guys want to see any sort of live stream of it? Do you want to see? I don't know. Would that be something you guys would like to see on a Friday live stream?
We'll have this game for a good 5 months before it comes out in America. I mean, there's a lot of stuff we can do with it if you guys are interested.
So anyways, let us know. But
yeah, so Famitsu, they just so preliminary scores just came out today. They're not like on their website right now, but Famitsu just released what their score for Persona 5 is, and it's a 39. It's a 10, 10, 10, 9.
And for those of you not familiar, it's 39 out of 40. Famitsu
right, 40 is a perfect score on Famitsu.
So
because
39 is really good.
Famitsu does what they call a cross review, which means that they take 4 different people's opinions on the game, and they review so many games. I mean, every week it looks like there's like 6 or 7 games coming out that they have reviews for. So it's always all these different people reviewing the games. I'm sure there's people that the higher ups get to review the higher profile games
that they
and stuff,
want
but,
to, yeah.
But yeah, it's always a bunch of different people, and so currently the Japanese version of Persona 5, they're saying 39 out of 40. Now that's not exactly like super useful information because it doesn't tell you anything like qualitative, which to me is the most important thing in a review. You need some qualitative stuff, not just quantitative. So you can't just say like a star number and have that mean anything necessarily to anybody, or a number from 1 to 10.
Right.
But telling people like, I enjoyed this part, I thought this was executed well, that's far more useful, which is what I think is more how I think is Destructoid runs their reviews that way. Or Kotaku might do something similar where they just say like a buy or a don't buy or something like that, but it's more just like, hey, if you care, like read the review. So we were going back into some old games, even just games this year. Star Fox Zero from Famitsu was a 35, 36, I think.
Was it a 9988?
Pretty high.
I think that's
34 then?
Something like that. So, but anyways, it was not as low of a score as I would have thought.
Right.
I have found that Famitsu has been very forgiving of a lot of games that are divisive, to say the least.
Which has prompted a lot of conspiracy theories on the internet of people saying...
Of course. They're all paid off.
Yeah,
people have been saying that for a long time. I do kind of find it refreshing, at least to some extent, that Famitsu doesn't appear to be carried about by the hype culture or the people who are hating on something and they don't feel the need to join in with everybody. They're kind of doing it their own, as objective as they can, I guess. So they aren't afraid to give a game like Star Fox, which is being, defecated on a 34, and say, yeah, this is a good game. I don't care.
Yeah, I think it's just like who are the specific people, and it's like different every time. So
right, that's the weirdest thing. There's such a big company.
So you could say like, oh, Famitsu gave these guys this score, but it's like, no, these like random 4 dudes that work for this company did, and it's not the same 4 dudes every time.
The interns who they're like, oh, you play this game, we don't even care.
Yeah,
we're gonna play this.
So like we were looking at old Final Fantasy games, and the lowest Famitsu score any Final Fantasy games received appears to be a 34 for Final Fantasy 5.
Yeah,
that's really high.
Everything like the first one and the second one were both 35s, and then like you even have a 40 for Final Fantasy 12.
Yeah.
So, but they're all right there in a really narrow range of like they all appear to be about like a 37 to a 40, and it's just not useful information at that point. It's like what the crap's the difference between a 37 and a 38 and a 39, if most games are going to fall in this really narrow range, it just doesn't tell you a heck of a lot.
I feel like video game rankings kind of all fall into that problem, but it's like exaggerated in Famitsu. But, if a game gets a 7, it's a bad game. That's like the way it's viewed. If you know what I mean, like, so what's with all the numbers that come before 7? You know what I mean? Like, what's their purpose if 7's bad?
That's Jim Sterling's argument, right?
Yeah,
they give things a 3, and it means something to him that it doesn't mean to the other people.
And film.
And that's
film
like a
reviews.
grading system where it's like an F, C, A, but an F, a 59% is an F, which is like you shouldn't use that scale for games or movies.
Yeah. I think that film reviews are a lot more nuanced in that way. Like, you can have a movie... Like, if you look at Metacritic scores for movies versus games are... I mean, you rarely see something. Higher. You rarely see something like a 4 or a 4 or 5 or even a 6 in games. Yeah. You always see, like, 7 and above. And in films, you'll see that quite often. Those lower numbers actually mean something in film reviews. Those lower scores. And it makes the higher scores mean something more as well. So when you see a film on Metacritic and it's got a 90, it's like, holy fetch, that's really high. Whereas for a game, it's like, that was as expected. That game that they hyped up for 2 years was the expected 9 out of 10. You know what I mean?
Right.
So,
I know what you mean.
Anyways,
okay, do you have...
I was just going to say, Famitsu, it does this to an even greater extent, I feel, and where everything is like, again, like a 37 to a 40.
Right.
At least all the big AAA Japanese games. They're a lot harsher on Western developed games for the most part. But.
Yeah, they didn't like Doom this year very much.
But see, again,
that was a well-reviewed game in the West. So
we say they didn't like it, but they gave it all 8s. But see
how
that already is like, right. How is that a bad score? Right. But it is for what they do, you know, relatively to how they score things. It is.
Yeah,
and that's what's so. I don't like the way the video game reviews score. It just.
Well, to me, it's like if you know that's what they're doing, and if everyone is doing it, it doesn't really matter. Just pretend that the range is 60 to 10. But not everybody is. There's like a small portion of people who aren't. Yeah. And it does feel like, why do you have these other numbers at all? But it's just going back to grade school. Like you're saying, Case, it's a grade school system.
Right, which is so weird. So you would think, I don't know. Yeah, it's
like,
just
did you get 75% of these things right versus 80%?
Right.
Of these things right,
and that's
the 5% difference is a letter grade score, but then you interpret that as like people carry that. To me, there's like a psychological impression of like, oh, I got a C in math this year and I'm not very good at it, or I got an A in history and I'm great at that, right? And then you know these grades or these numbers and percentages, and then I feel like people subconsciously apply them to scores that they see.
Yeah.
Oh, this is a C. Okay, yeah, like I did in math in freaking 9th grade. I sucked at it. Okay.
It's so dumb, because if you're gonna look like, in my opinion, you know, you should have your average, which should be your mean, right? Mm-hmm, it should be 5 out of 10, or it should be the halfway point. Yeah. It should be. And then an F would be like a 2 out of 10, and a B, a 6 or 7 out of 10 could be a B, and an 8 is an A minus. So
like we just scored.
That's just not how they do it.
Kingsglaive last week.
Oh yeah, out of 5.
And I give that movie a 2 out of 5, and I think a lot of people would be like, "Oh, he hates the movie," and that's just not the way I see it.
It's still a star.
It's still a star.
2 stars.
Stars are
like
powerful.
I see scores as being the median means average. So 2.5,
2.5 would be a C.
Is like, this movie is okay. I felt it was just below being, but we weren't doing halves. We weren't doing halves. We were doing hard stars. So I wouldn't have given it a 3, but I also wouldn't have given it a 2 on a 10 scale. I would have given it right in the middle. I would have given it a 5.
It was a decent.
So, and I do think that's the advantage of the star system. I think most people intuitively get that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That like 3 is average, right? But then a percentage, all of a sudden that's a 60. And
right.
It's like,
once you
wow,
get to 10
this is bad. This is bad. But is the star system 3 stars? And it's like, oh, okay. Like, kind of middle of the road, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's weird. Scoring systems are interesting. I like, who was it that you were watching who had his whole scoring system where he was like playing through Chrono Trigger and he was like point up for this.
Yeah, that's Lore Runner.
That was interesting.
Lore Runner,
and it's not a perfect system.
Well, that's going to skew to higher scores for longer games, but if you can control for the length of the game, that's kind of an interesting.
It's an interesting idea where every time you come across something positive, you just give it a plus, and then every time you come across something negative you don't like, you give it a minus. And
so then you'll end up with like 140 pluses and then 90 minuses.
Well, you just
do some math.
He subtracts it as he goes, so he'll have like the pluses on the screen, and then when he gets a negative, he'll just take one away and then add another one.
Or he'll have like 20 negatives on the screen and he goes the other way.
I don't think he's ever played a game hated that much, but
that's funny.
It's an interesting way of doing it, but yeah, like you said, it's tough to account for the length of games because you just have more opportunities to like something, you know?
Yeah. It always bothered me reading like, I mean, this is going to turn a whole review, like, you know, going into everyone's review methodology, but IGN, the way they used to do it, and kind of the way they've done it up until very recently, actually, still is where they'll have these subcategories, and the subcategories sometimes get very granular, and then they're like, the replay value is a 7.5, and it's like, what on earth?
It's stupid.
Not every game, like most. okay, I can't say most people. There's a huge portion of people out there that just don't care to play a game more than once.
Right.
They want to play it, and they're going to move on to another game. So it doesn't...
And then there's
they don't
games like
care.
Call of Duty that you will play over and over and over. But that doesn't mean it's
Because
this
they're-
phenomenal golden game.
Exactly.
But its replay value is phenomenal because there's no story. You just get on and
So
play.
sometimes it's like the final score is driven by what that company seems to think are the most important attributes of the game, which aren't widely held views necessarily, right?
Yeah.
So like some people love replay value, right? I mean, like apparently you could play Persona 4 Golden for like 200 hours if you wanted to. There's a ton of replay value there. I guarantee you most people don't really care that much about putting that amount of time into the game. I know there's a lot of people that have, but like I can think of games that I've played where it's like the replay value of Ocarina of Time, you can find all the gold Skulltulas. Well, whoop-de-doo, you could do that. You don't really get much for it.
You don't.
In fact, it's kind of like,
the reward for it's horrible.
Yeah,
because you can get all of the like the largest wallet in the game, and you can get all the hearts without doing that. I think it gives you like a rupee, like a huge.
He gives you money.
It's like
and you can keep going back.
Continue to go back.
So it's like you have infinite money.
Money
But
means
you do
nothing in
anyway.
that game.
No, you basically have
It's
infinite
literally
money by
the
that
rupee
point.
armor.
One
though.
of the
if the
worst-
rupee armor was in,
If they included
then that would
in
be a
Ocarina of
cool
Time.
Yeah.
thing.
It was one of the worst rewards for something that takes so long to do that I've ever seen.
Yeah, it was pretty. It was sort of like beating 1080 snowboarding on 64, and then it's just, you did a good job,
And then it's over.
and it's over.
Good job.
Replay value, right? They had that replay value, but not in a way that necessarily improved the game at all.
Right.
But that would bump up a replay value score,
you
right?
play it
And you could
longer.
collect all the things.
Yeah, you get
Or
more.
like Twilight Princess. There's 5 heart pieces to make a heart in Twilight Princess instead of 4, meaning there are more heart pieces to find. Cool, right? I guess. But, are we bumping up the replay value score there? Anyways, anyone who cares about that, it's going to skew their review, where I feel like the average person doesn't care that much. So, IGN getting granular with that kind of stuff, and then using a math formula where this is weighted more than this, and then like as if there's a science behind it at all.
Yeah.
Behind things you enjoy. It would be like you freaking ate a sandwich and you're reviewing it and you're like, all right, there was a ratio of this much lettuce, there was this much, the dressing on here, and then like I really freaking dug this cheese and this, but the cheese is only weighted at a 0.25 on the scale, right?
Right. The cheese is the best part of the sandwich,
It's
but
just
it's not
dumb.
weighted enough.
This is honestly kind of why we've moved away from doing scores on our reviews, is because people get, like you're saying, so focused on like each and every little tiny aspect and what that means to like the larger score, that it undermines the analysis, which is focusing more on like what the complete experience is like, and how this adds to it and how this adds to it. What are the themes? What is the game trying to say to us, like with its gameplay, with its thematic content, and how do each of the elements of the game kind of contribute to that whole? And I just feel like scores really undermine that kind of analysis.
Yeah.
They distract from it. So.
You boil the whole game down to a number. It's just really it's weird because there's a lot of intangibles and there's a lot of weird things on games that,
and
I don't know, and numbers just don't really reflect that.
Yeah, it kills any semblance of like objectivity, basically. It's like, hey, I know what this is to a freaking number.
Right, yeah.
Like specifically.
I can
now that's
quantify.
fine. You can say something for a number or starting for yourself. You can totally say that. You can make that value judgment. But then I feel like the danger there is that people look at it and they go like, oh, dang, that's a 7 out of 10. All right, I'm going to avoid it or whatever. When it's like to them, maybe it wasn't.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't know that till you play it. But that's why, like we were talking earlier about this, and it's like, find somebody who you trust, who reviews movies, games, whatever, and then look into what they thought about it, and that's going to do you way more good than even looking at Metacritic or
what do you call it? Aggregate.
Right,
score.
Because you find someone whose tastes align a lot with you. So I feel like that very well may be true with a lot of you guys watching or listening, that you may have run across us because we have very similar tastes.
No, yeah.
In which we can tell
then
you
our
what
review
we
means
thought.
Something more.
And then it means something to you,
people,
but it might not mean the same thing to like my mom. Where she would like play, she would watch Kingsglaive and just be like, I think
zero.
I need to, like,
Zero.
Zero stars.
Sucks.
So
and that's funny because I've had a few comments on some of the reviews I've done where people say, "Oh, what would you score this game?" And I'm like, "Dude, the review is 20 minutes long. If you don't know what I feel about this game after watching my entire review, like I'm not just going to boil it down to something you can look at in 1 second and then decide how I felt about it. Like it means so much more than that to me. I'm sorry, you have to watch the whole review. You have to. I won't let you just look at a number and
do
then
a
skip the
TLDR.
review.
TLDR,
You've got to do
6
the
out of
whole
10.
thing. I'm sorry.
And I'll run across people who watch the Final Fantasy reviews who will lose their fetch because, why isn't Final Fantasy 6 a 5 out of 5?
It should be a 6 out of 5.
And the thing that they're missing is like, well, I guess the disconnect comes from the fact that they don't care as much about like side content, right? They personally don't care. It's it's optional. I don't have to do it. As if to them it's then it's what's the word I'm looking for? It's
like negated, like it doesn't matter.
Exempt. It's exempt from criticism because it's optional. You know what I mean? It's like for that person, that's true because you don't care about it. But there are a lot of people who do care about it. I tend to care about side content a lot because side content is often put there for you to engage in stuff outside of the story. And if that's not really, really engaging or really, really well crafted, then to me it's like a huge distraction. And like gold saucer kind of stuff in Final Fantasy VII. Like a lot of those mini games are fine, and a lot of them are bad. And
snowboarding really told me a lot about Cloud's character, though.
You know what I mean? Like, but that's a very story-driven game,
right?
And so, like, those types of things, those mini games, like being shoehorned in there, and a lot of them not being optional, like you have to get through it at least one time. That's important to me because that makes me go like, oh, fetch! Like, I don't like doing this. Mm-hmm. Anyways, I'm going on a long tangent. I didn't mean to do that. To some people, that's not important. Like, that doesn't take away from the experience at all because, like, whatever, it's just this little thing that takes a minute to do, or I don't have to do it at all. And to other people, it's really important. So even though you and I, this person criticizing me, may agree on everything in terms of the story and the major gameplay mechanics, you still get pissed at me because I criticized one thing that you don't even care about. Instead of looking at that and saying, that doesn't apply to me, so I still really love this game. I think it's perfect. You jump on my back because I didn't give it the same exact score that you would have given it. You know what I mean? It's something that takes away from like the point of the video and the point of the review and the analysis. It's like, and so that's why we don't do it anymore. Yeah. But
that little tangent actually reminds me of something. I'm just gonna like squeeze it in here because I think it's the only point in the podcast we could talk about. But Justice Monsters 5, the little mini game that's going to be in Final Fantasy 15, and the mobile version of it has been out for a week or so now, and I've played it. Put about an hour into it, and it's very much in the vein of Monster Strike. It feels almost exactly like Monster Strike, actually, if any of you have played Monster Strike. Monster Strike's crazy popular in Japan right now, so I can't blame Square Enix for wanting to go that route, but they've got all these pinball elements, and the enemy has a weak point on his backside or something, and you got to bounce your dude off and hit it there, and then there's the monster and the card collecting and stuff. That's all very interesting to me. I would be very interested in Final Fantasy 15 if there's a way in which that the characters or anything from that are even used in like jokes in the game or something like that. Like that would be one way they could use it that would be really enriching to me, is like extra little content there. But I would sure hope that they don't require you to beat any part of Justice Monsters 5 in Final Fantasy 15 to like move forward in the story. You know what I mean? That's always what bothered me in Final Fantasy 9 when you got to Trino and you had to play the card game to move forward.
Yeah.
And I did not like that. I didn't like being forced to do that sort of thing. So anyways, on the little tangential point of side content, I thought that was really interesting. I don't know if any of you guys have tried Justice Monsters 5 yet, but it's worth looking at if you've ever played Monster Strike. I would check it out. So
yeah, and as just the last defense of myself for my criticism of side content, because I'm a person who's very interested in the story. Another thing about side content, especially in RPGs, is that that's often where you get your most powerful abilities and stuff from. your best equipment is from doing side content. And if the side content is really frustrating, annoying, repetitive, all this stuff, but you're doing it because the reward that you want is hidden behind all that stuff, I think that's a valid point to criticize. Anyways, I had talked about side content before, and I don't think I totally perfectly represented why I was criticizing it. But
well, one last thing.
All right.
When you mentioned what's the difference between a 37 and a 38 for Famitsu, I'd say, and this is just like me making a point, not saying this for sure, but the difference between a 37 and a 38 is that in a 38, Famitsu gets their logo and their score printed on the cover of the game.
Oh, right.
And used in all of the advertising. And it's like free advertising for them. And I feel like that's a huge problem in the gaming industry. Is that if you give it a high review,
then
your company is going to be featured.
Brand will be on the box art and stuff.
And advertised. And Famitsu gave it a 38. But if you gave it a 37, you lost that advertising.
that totally reminds me of when we were at E3. And one of the things that blew me away was the booth badges.
Badges, yep.
And they come up and it's, we gave you best Civ 6 had best strategy PC game or something, which is like there were no other strategy PC games at E3, so you're going to win all those awards.
But those awards get put on
the booth in a prominent place, and they have their logo and everything on it.
So you look at all the logos of the different
all the blogs and the. I mean, someone was like, "I have never heard of you before."
That reminds me of that print of Okami for Wii that had the watermarked IGN logo burned into it on the cover of the game and also on the guide.
IGN paid for that, dude. They paid money for that.
There.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So, anyways, reviews. Yes. That's our rant about reviews and things. But we are looking forward to Persona 5. We'll be playing it in Japanese first. So, sweet.
All right. So this one's very interesting. I just reviewed Paper Mario 64. Great game. In my review, I talk specifically about how Paper Mario is leaving the RPG ways. Their turn-based system is being abandoned for a more platformy puzzle kind of feel. And my review just came out yesterday, and just yesterday I saw that there was a statement by one of the I think it was one of the producers of Color Splash Paper Mario, and he was talking about why Paper Mario abandoned more or less the RPG system, and they still have elements of it in it. It's not completely gone, but he was saying that he felt that there was a strange, like, the Mario and Luigi games were RPGs, and then the Paper Mario 64 and Thousand Year Door, those were RPGs, and he felt that it was stretching Mario's RPG-ness to...
Now, did the director think that, or was that Nintendo executives that thought that?
No, I don't know exactly. Now, this is... upon reading the statement here, this is actually a producer, not the director.
Oh, okay.
This is a producer of Color Splash, so I believe he would be an executive at Nintendo. And he's saying they want to distance the two. They don't want them to be the same thing. And I felt that they were very different. I didn't feel that Mario and Luigi and Paper Mario were anywhere close enough to where it was a problem.
They combined the two of them into one game this last year, and that's like their own fault if anybody thinks they're the same thing.
It wasn't Sticker Star. It was the other one. Paper Jam. Yeah.
That didn't get very good reviews.
No, it did not. And then Sticker Star also people had problems with. It's weird stuff. I think it might come sort of from... This happened around Paper Mario Wii, Super Paper Mario. So this was way before this happened, but I feel like it's kind of a result of Nintendo combining their departments, the mobile and console departments, into one. Okay. And so now we're getting Paper Mario games on the 3DS, which we weren't before. They weren't DS or advanced games, they were just consoles.
Yeah.
And now they're kind of becoming mobile games as well. Yeah. And now I see it kind of starting to infringe a little bit, and that the two teams might kind of have like an issue there that makes sense, especially with the rumors of what the NX is going to be, that Nintendo might be moving towards, hey, everything's going to be on one system. Now having two different Mario RPGs on the same system, it does sound a little strange.
Okay.
So they're trying to move Paper Mario away from RPGs so that it can be a puzzle something other, because they love the Paper Mario style. But they don't...
Well, this new game looks really like
actually looks very
like
interesting.
visually interesting.
Yeah. They use a lot of like super realistic looking assets and
Yeah.
like textures and things. It's crazy. But I don't like that Paper Mario's moved away from Mario RPG. I feel like Mario RPG is where it started, and as soon as they kind of abandoned the RPG roots, so to speak, that's kind of where I started to lose interest. I played Super Paper Mario for maybe 2 hours, and I thought it was going to be an RPG, and I was very surprised that it wasn't. Because to me, Paper Mario means turn-based RPG. Mm-hmm. It's like a Mario RPG carrying on the legacy. But it kind of stopped doing that. And I just feel that frustrates me. It might be a good game, but I went into it with the same expectations I went into Thousand Year Door, except it wasn't that.
Wasn't that your
So
game?
I loved Thousand Year Door, but yeah, it's not what it was. It's not what it was. What I feel like it should be.
Yeah.
I have to say that I've played the only Mario RPG game I played. I mean, I played Mario RPG a bit, like maybe 6 or 7 hours into it. I don't know how long it is in total, but
Like 20, maybe 18.
and that was a really long time ago. I think it was on your Wii at your house, but the only other one I've actually really played is the first Mario and Luigi RPG.
Oh, for the Advance?
Game Boy Advance one.
Partners in Time.
Partners in Time, then the Superstar Saga was.
Superstar Saga was the
that.
first one. That's the one I played. So I haven't played Partners in Time. I have Bowser's Inside Story. I
That game
have
looks so funny.
another one for the 3DS or for the DS. I don't remember which. Anyways, I don't know why I haven't played those because I really, really, really loved Superstar Saga. Like, I loved that game. I feel like, you know, because I played Mario RPG a bit, and I wasn't grabbed quite as much by that as I was by Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga. I think the whole thing, and I think the main reason is the fake, like,
The Italian.
Oh,
that
they're
and it was so funny. It was so funny to me. Like, that's what hooked me, was the humor.
yeah.
And then the timed RPG mechanics,
Yes,
I think
yeah.
are a little, well, obviously they're deeper than Mario RPGs are. Like more,
There's a wider variety.
a variety of things to do. But I haven't played Paper Mario myself, so I don't know. You would know better, like, if it more closely represents like the original Mario RPG experience. But if it's the case that like that kind of game, that kind of version of Mario RPG doesn't exist anymore, then that'd be pretty sad. Because I don't feel like the Mario and Luigi games feel very much like Mario RPG in particular.
So like Bowser's Inside Story still feels very Mario RPG-esque to me. I see a lot of the influence in that game. I haven't played Superstar Saga, but it very much does. But I don't know. I would maybe say that with the battle system that the Mario and Luigi games might be more like Mario RPG than the Paper Mario games are.
Yeah.
But the Paper Mario games, I feel like with the setting, might be a little more like Mario RPG games or the original Mario.
Because
RPG.
the Mario and Luigi RPG games, they feel wackier, like
they're
really
crazy.
crazy scenarios. Like the Bowser's Inside Story, they're
Well,
like inside of Bowser.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know
Yeah,
what I mean?
and,
Like,
fun.
and then you're controlling him and you're hitting things inside him to make it so he can lift the log so his muscles get stronger.
there's one section I saw where they were like trying to make him sneeze. You know, like they had a bunch of like pollen or whatever. They were like trying to spread it around and like make him sneeze so they could escape or whatever.
They
like-
make him into like a super.
Like the
Super
scenarios of these games feel like a lot more out there.
There's a whole mechanic in specifically in Bowser's Inside Story where like you hit Mario on the top of the head with a mallet, or Luigi, you hit one of them on top of the head, they get squished small so they can go in a smaller space, and then get something and come back out and pop back out. It's very cartoony that way. Where Mario RPG was never cartoony per se. Like
it felt a little more straightforward in like it's just like story and scenario.
It took
I
itself
felt like
slightly
Paper
more
Mario.
seriously.
Paper Mario is maybe more similar to that, aside from its like aesthetic, you know. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't played them, so I can't say
Yeah,
for
I
sure.
agree.
But
Yeah.
so if there isn't a game that has like a presentation that feels like Super Mario RPG, the original one, I could see that as being pretty sad.
It's just
a good reason to be upset about the way Paper Mario's trending now.
You know, honestly, I feel like none of the Paper Mario games have, like, they've been the closest thing we've had, but they have never been really that close to the tone of Mario RPG. Like, characters like Geno, like, suggest, like, this more, like, supernatural, you know, cosmic influence on events and all this stuff. And they always have, like, the stars and things.
Right.
But, like, I don't know, you know, something like Geno, it feels very Square, you know, Squaresoft.
Yeah, where they're definitely missing Square's touch to things. Which, you know, some people think it's a good or bad thing, and honestly, Square probably doesn't. I feel like at least at the beginning when Paper Mario was being developed, Nintendo was kind of more or less stepping on eggshells as far as making an RPG with Mario, but not having it be Mario RPG 2 because Square was going to sue them for that. So that's how we got all of this. But I feel like one day we could still have a Mario RPG 2. I think it could still happen, possibly one day. And if Paper Mario becomes what it's becoming, then that's fine, as long as maybe one day I can get a real Mario RPG sequel. Because it is very different. It's different from, you know, Mario and Luigi and Paper Mario.
Man, isn't that just the funniest name, the Mario RPG?
Yeah.
Are there any other RPGs that are literally called such RPG?
RPG. Yeah, you would have to take a character as popular as Mario and
like
as
Sonic
defined
RPG.
As Mario and say, okay, this is Mario, but it's not
it's
the
an
kind
RPG,
of Mario
guys.
you think. Yeah.
You know that had to be like a stand-in name initially, and then it eventually stuck. Like, you know what, this sounds fun.
Yeah, just leave it.
Well, it's kind of like how they
That's
tacked
smart decision,
64 on the end of every
so you know
Nintendo 64 game.
64.
That's
Wave
true.
Race 64. Mario 64.
I believe Paper
Mario. Or the
Mario.
Super with the Super Nintendo. It was the same game, but just Super that same game.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Paper Mario was called Paper Mario 64. And you don't need to do that. There's no other Paper Mario game.
I know.
It did not exist at the
distinguish it
time, and they had to call it 64.
They were pushing that 64 thing pretty hard.
Yeah, they were.
64 bits, we win.
Well, and that's the thing. I was just actually doing some research into like the character design of Crash Bandicoot, and one of the creators was like ripping on the N64, being like it wasn't true 64 bits, and that was like a lie and all this crap. He had a whole section about him.
He's still
pissed.
in the midst of the war. The war's been over for 2 decades.
Yeah. 20 years?
And he's still like on the battlefield, like chopping off heads of dead people and stuff. Like, no, I'm better than you.
The PlayStation won the 64 war, okay?
All right, so we're going to get into some of your suggested topics now. Infinite View was really just wanting us to talk about RPG battle systems a bit. And I had a really good discussion with Hyun. He's one of our viewers regularly here on the channel. He lives in Japan. He's a super cool guy. Anyways, we were talking about, a couple weeks ago on the podcast, we were discussing Final Fantasy 15's battle system, and we had mentioned briefly, you know, I particularly would really like to see a system where you can switch characters and have control of the whole party, and that sort of led into
the fast-paced, slow-paced.
Yeah, a larger discussion about to him turn-based RPG mechanics and action battle mechanics from action games are what he describes as diametrically opposed. You cannot have the benefits of this and the benefits of this in a hybrid because, well, I'm really trying to summarize this. If you want to read what we talked about, we had a long posts back and forth and really sort of like discussed this. And
he was even going so far, if this is the right conversation, I'm thinking of comparing story as well, and like how much story plays into like a story-driven game versus like the mechanics-driven game, right? Or is this another conversation that I'm thinking of?
You might be right. It was a long post, but I have several long post discussions with people, but you know, basically what he was trying to get at was let's just use chess as sort of like a really simple example. Like the game of chess would not be the same game if all the pieces could move on their own. Even if beforehand you told, because people keep bringing up gambits from Final Fantasy XII. And what gambits are, for those who don't understand what gambits are, you basically just tell the computer what to do in any given situation. If health falls below 20%, heal.
That's like the Tales games; they do the same.
Right.
Thing.
Kingdom Hearts kind of
like a lot of games have done something similar to that, like all the way back even to like Seiken Densetsu 3 and
Tales of Fantasia.
Like Tales of Fantasia, like they've been doing that for a while, but the Gambit system is very deep. Like you can really get into the details of how they act in any given situation. When to use magic, what type of magic to use on who, and it's very complex in how you can tell your party members to fight. But his point was that even in a system like that, if it were, say, chess, and you told all your pieces how to move, and you were controlling, I don't know, the king or the queen or something like that, there could be a situation at any given time where you might want to do more of an abstract move.
Right.
And being able to then tell your people who are moving on their own, like, no, everybody stop it. You can't do that in real time. If it's in real time, there's no like time. It doesn't become your turn where you get to then make assignments, and all these things are happening at once. There's a ceiling that your brain reaches for the number of things that can be managed in real time at once.
Unless you're South Korean StarCraft player.
StarCraft, 100 clicks per minute or whatever?
Yeah. Like there's a limit to that. And at some point you're going to reach a place where you can't make the decision you want to make. You don't have full control. And therefore, the benefits of a traditional turn-based system, you've lost that now. You cannot have that in any kind of game with an action-oriented battle mechanic. And on the inverse of that, the benefit of an action game is testing your reaction time, reading patterns, those kinds of skills that are very different. And whenever you try to bring a hybrid in that allows you to like pause for a second and switch to that character or give a command to that person, you've now lost what makes an action game, right? You've lost... I look at it this way, like in Resident Evil 4, for instance, the intense moments when all these guys are on top of you, you can pause at any time and go into your menu and take a healing potion or mix a potion for healing. You can take as much time as you want to just pause in the middle of that and just kind of settle down. And I remember on my first playthrough of that game, I did it all the time. It's like, fetch, I'm surrounded. Just pause. Just think about this for a second. Like now, that whole element of being in the moment and the stress of that
split second
is
make
gone.
Decision.
Yeah. Whereas in a game, say, like Zombie U on the Wii U, you can't pause. And same with Dark Souls, you cannot pause. Like, the game continues in real time even when you're in the menus. And so it's a very different feeling to it, this like level of anxiety or stress, and not in a bad way, but in being able to handle these things in real time that you get in action games. You lose as soon as you add like a pause mechanic to it. So when you get these games, and Square has been experimenting with trying to create a good hybrid for many, many years. Basically, since Final Fantasy X and X-2, they have not had a traditional turn-based system. They've been trying to put these action elements into the games to varying success. It doesn't mean that people don't like what they've done. A lot of people really love Final Fantasy XII and they love the Gambit system, but it does not give you the same level of control as the older games. And in terms of straight action, let's say something more like Kingdom Hearts, again, you don't really have that same control over Donald and Goofy.
They kind of do whatever they do.
And you don't have access to like all of your abilities all the time. You know what I mean? Like even going back to Secret of Mana. Well, no, Secret of Mana does do this, sorry. But you have to pause the game and go to your scroll wheel.
Yeah,
and
you got the wheel.
And go around and choose your spell. So that takes away from the action mechanic side of it. But let's say something like Crisis Core. In Crisis Core, you have all this materia, but you can only set up 6 for your little scroll wheel at the bottom. So you go right and left, and you select one of the 6 that you've like equipped and set.
Kingdom Hearts has like you select your D-pad. What are you going to be your hotkey options?
Right, and you don't have access to all of your spells like you would in a list, in a menu, in a Final Fantasy game. So you're making sacrifices at one end or the other, and Heon's point was that you don't get the true benefit from this or this with a hybrid.
Well, it's like in bowling, if you have a 7-10 split and you bowl right down the middle and you don't end up getting even.
Yeah.
You don't get either pin. You miss both, and then everyone... Yeah.
And there's a very valid point there. One that, and again, I think I'm going to make a video on this eventually and try to dive into like real depth with it. But there's a very valid point to be made there is that, why not just choose one or the other? Because you get a full experience out of this or this. These hybrids sort of miss the mark on both sides. And what I thought of is... Because, okay, for me personally, I enjoy playing games like Dark Souls more than I enjoy playing any turn-based battle system ever. Like, not that I don't like playing them, not that they're not fun, but eventually I get fatigued by it, especially if there's random battles. Like, oh, my fetch. Like, I just want to explore. Yeah. I just want to go see if there's a chest over there. I just want to, go to this place and talk to that person. I don't care about fighting right now. I'm so tired of fighting. That happens to me in turn-based games. It helps when you have games like Chrono Trigger that let you avoid the battles. But still, like, there are many points in time in turn-based battle systems where I do not want to fight. Whereas when I play Dark Souls, that's what I'm playing it for. I'm there to fight things. Like, that's the reason I'm playing the game, right? So I prefer action games. So to me, there's a part of me that still says we can still find a way. Let's keep experimenting. Let's find a way. And I do think there are a lot of hybrid games that I've enjoyed to play a lot. But there hasn't been like that right balance for me yet. And I think Heon's point was there can't be. But I started thinking about it deeper. And what came to my mind, first of all, and I'll stress that this is a rudimentary example. It's not as deep as I would like it to be. But Mass Effect 2, and maybe in some form Mass Effect 1, I can't remember exactly if you could do this in Mass Effect 1, but in Mass Effect 2 you can tell your units where to stand. Yeah. You can tell them to go there or go there, and you can tell them to use certain abilities. So like they've all have their like
you
kind of
special in those games usually when you do that.
And I couldn't remember if you could freeze if that's how, because it's been forever since I've played Mass Effect 2, but yeah, there's like a slowdown mechanic or a freeze mechanic of some kind, I think, and then you tell them do this, do that. And see, to me, turn-based battle systems don't really give you the direct control over the character's actions in the same way that action games do, because you're more of like a commander. You're just giving them commands and then you watch them do the action. You aren't like running up there and performing the action on the enemy. You're just giving the commands. So in this case, I have direct control over one character, but I'm giving commands to the others. That, to me, sort of gives you the same like experience as a turn-based game, because you're still just giving commands, right? You're not losing anything there. But the commands that you can give are very simple. And there's only very few things you can really do there. I would like to see something like that expanded. How you would do that, I don't know, because I don't think people like voice commands. I don't think that's going to be an acceptable thing. That would be one way to where you could give more like a variety of things. If they wrote a script that could recognize all kinds of voice commands and you could tell your characters what to do in real time. But I just don't know if that'll ever be accepted. If someone wants to sit on a couch and yell at their game or talk to their game while they're playing it.
You'll never be able to play it at night when your parents are asleep. Assuming you live in
But I think, again, you'd have to take away from the action elements to some extent. But I think the reason would be because if you could pause or slow down time, I think that's like the trendy thing to do right now. It goes into like a slow motion instance, and then you have time to kind of like sit there and like figure out, assign your people what to do. I have so many thoughts. I'm trying to like keep them all straight, but what that simulates is the fact that you can't scroll through a menu and give a command as quickly as you could say it. So the reason you're slowing down time is because this character in that moment could just say this thing to him, but I can't input that command as quickly as I could say it. So we have to slow down the time to simulate how quickly that command could really be given, right?
So what this actually makes me think of, and I think one of the best systems that's anywhere close to what you're talking about, is the Rainbow Six games.
Yes.
You would normally think Rainbow Six would enter into a talk about RPG battle systems, but in Rainbow Six games, and then here's the difference. You don't slow down, freeze time, because you know what the scenario is every time that you're going in. There's some degree of variability, and you
get to a door and you
need to look under the doors and use different technology. But normally, it's like there are different scenarios, very true to life. You've put together your squad given the specific mission you're going on. So you've got this guy who can defuse bombs, and he's this good at this. You've got to protect all your guys, get around, you're at this door, I'm over here. When we breach, we're going in, you've got that guy, and I've got that guy, and it's very, very specific. They don't ever have to freeze time to do that, but it's because you're going into hostage situations almost every single time.
Right.
But I'm trying to think of any real life parallels. That's the only real life parallel to this type of scenario where you would have a leader who's a guy on the ground who's literally telling every other person what to do. Ordinarily, that person is not on the ground.
Right.
Ordinarily, that person is not one of the specific people actually doing any of those things, unless it's a SWAT team type situation or a very small squad like Mass Effect style.
And they know.
Yeah, and so, but the trade-off again is that in real life, whenever you do that, it happens in the course of a plan leading up to, and then it happens in stages. You're doing this, okay, we're at this point, what are we doing next? You're doing this, and this. Right?
And it's not like you go from one hostage situation 5 minutes later to another hostage situation that you didn't plan for, and then, like random encounters in RPGs or just fighting tons of enemies. And the SWAT team's not meant for that.
Yeah, and then the trade-off is it's more methodical. It is slower paced than playing Call of Duty, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't played
it's slower. Yeah.
Yeah, and so to me, it's like you were saying, the limitations of the human brain, the limitations of just time and reality, right? Is that you only have so much time to tell everyone what to do to a point where it's going to be far more effective for that person to make their own decisions. So at which point it's really just an AI limitation, moving forward, which hopefully we're on the cusp of some massive advancements in AI. With networked computing specifically, Nintendo's patent where they were talking about doing some of the processing off-site, supplementary computing devices. And they were talking about that, managing systems, weather systems, or even AI. And that would be amazing if you could essentially tap into a supercomputer AI that's running one of your guys. He's not going to do the dumbest crap ever. That to me is the most frustrating thing about Mass Effect is the frequency in which it's you can't rely on your guys surviving through a battle, because that's probably not going to work if you're not going to be doing 90% of the work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but that's what I think of as Rainbow Six and the way that they handle squad-based combat.
You know who does that in a little bit more RPG manner, or a little bit more kind of action? It's faster paced, but Battalion Wars, where you have a bunch of squads of people, and you've got your assignments, and you tell people to go here, here, and here, and you're one of the dudes, and you've got all of your different artillery units and stuff.
In contrast with Advance Wars, where you're just the commander moving units, those battles kind of happen on their own. In Battalion Wars, it's you are at least one of the units.
You're one of the dudes, and you're commanding everyone and all that stuff.
See, and what I would like to see is the ability, if we can work out this whole pausing thing, but being able to give more varied commands to the AI, but also, if you choose, being able to switch to that person and do it manually. Switch to that character or that character in real time.
It sounds like a lot like Battalion Wars, what you're talking about.
Yeah, I haven't played Battalion Wars very much, but I understand where you're coming from.
And you can switch.
People continually bring up every time I talk about this Final Fantasy Type 0. No, Final Fantasy Type 0 is not what I'm talking about. The thing I hate about Final Fantasy Type 0 is that when you switch characters, say I'm in this position with the character I'm at, and then this character's over here, and this character's over here. When I switch, that person switches places with me. Or not even switches places, but just comes up, and they just kind of blink,
they high five.
I don't get to move over there. There's no strategy to positioning on the battlefield. All the characters feel very much the same if you're just either a melee or a long range attacker. There's no strategy to that battle system. I really hate it. But what I'm talking about is having strategic value to positioning on a battlefield. That guy needs to be there for a reason. I'm going to have you be doing this kind of attack. You can assign them MMORPG roles like tank and healer or whatever, DPS. But at any point, if I want to, I can just become that role. Just switch to that person and play manually that role for a while. And if I don't want to, if I just want to stick in this role, I just want to be tank the whole game because that's what I like doing, whatever. But give me the option, and that's kind of what they do in Final Fantasy 15 with the fact that Noctis can use any kind of weapon. He can transform his weapon, and so you can play in any class with him. So it kind of diminishes, but what that does is it diminishes.
You can't change the position.
The party, like the sense of like everybody having their own distinct thing and working together. It puts every role on the player, just one person again. And so it really just comes down to goals. What is your goal as a developer? Do you want to create what I just mentioned, a party system where each person has a distinct role and they have to work together towards something? If that's your goal, like that's at the center of what you're trying to do with the battle system, you probably need to make a turn-based RPG to really execute that effectively.
It seems like they're not doing that.
Yeah, if your goal is an action style game, then you probably need to just step away from that. Don't try to have control over multiple parties or multiple people in a party. Just have control of one character. Don't even do something more like Dark Souls, where you just are one dude and it's one dude on a journey. But when you're trying to tell a story with multiple characters and the whole theme of it is like brotherhood and like working together, action style combat might not lend itself very well to telling that kind of story if you're trying to blend your gameplay with your story and have them complement each other. So where that hybrid works, I think, has to be in a different kind of goal. What kind of skills do you want to develop in the player? Here, on the action side, you're testing their reaction time. You're testing their ability to read patterns. You're testing, different kinds of skills. Over here, you're testing preparation, organization. You're not testing the same kinds of combat skill. You don't even really testing combat skill at all in a turn-based RPG. It's all about strategy, thinking through something before you do it, planning ahead, making sure that you get the right equipment. It's a very different kind of thing. And, some games have like active time battle where you have to think on your feet a little bit more. But for the most part, traditional RPGs, turn-based RPGs, you have as much time on your turn as you want to kind of like, all right, what should I do here? So very two different things. But in a hybrid, I think you can test something more along the lines of what a commander of a squad, those unique skills. Being able to not only think on your feet, react to changing circumstances or whatever, but also be able to manage people in real time. And the challenges that you come across there are what the limits of the human brain, challenge us with. Like, you have to try and manage all these things as they're happening at the same time and, account for all this stuff in real time. That is a challenge in and of itself that a battle commander has to learn how to do well.
Well, like, there's a reason why most squads like that, or SWAT teams or Navy SEAL teams, are very small numbers of people. Very small, because you add too many people to it, and the complexity goes up by order of magnitude every single person you add. If you have two people, you only have to know their relationship, how they can help each other. You add three people, you need to know not one person's more relationship, but also like double the relationships. And then four people, you need to know how they each. So it gets incredibly complicated, which is why I think Mass Effect only has two squad members when you're a squad, because you add four, and I think it's too much for the human brain to juggle. I honestly do. So like that's my main thought, is just that it's an issue of flow and the psychology of it. And I think that people in an action game, you can achieve flow more easily when you only have to worry about your own situation.
Yeah.
You only have to worry about what you are doing. And you don't have to worry about, like, in the pattern of whatever you're fighting, they're doing this, and I need to make sure that this guy does this at the right time for him.
Right.
That's an order of magnitude more complicated. And so to me, yeah, you can have a turn-based system, and the flow there is going to be achieved in a completely different way than the flow is achieved in an action-based system. And every person you add, it just increases the complexity, not just by one person. You know what I mean? So I think in this type of system, I think that's why Kingdom Hearts is just you're just 3 people.
Right.
Like total, because and not like Kingdom Hearts gives you that kind of control, but I think that each person you add, it gets so complicated. And I honestly think at this point in time, it's just an AI limitation on why there's not more of that. You know,
that's probably true. You know, Inazuma 11 is very interesting because it's soccer, but it's RPG soccer kind of.
Yeah.
And you can draw a path for characters on the DS as you're telling characters what to do, and from a top-down perspective. And so you're coming around kicking the ball, and you can draw up a play, and then they execute it the way you did it. The problem is you still have to go into a stop time thing. The time stops. You
trying to do that in real time,
and sometimes it doesn't do what you exactly what you drew. And then sometimes it just doesn't work. The defense blocked it or something. But it is cool to be able to have something like that.
Because in real life, you would just turn to your teammate and
say, hey, go around the
give
side
a
and shoot him
vocal
once I do
cue
this.
or
Now,
any
you
other
can
kind of signal
do that
to tell them what to do.
In the FIFA games, there are ways to do that.
To
If
have
you're a
someone
striker, you can call what somebody needs to cut.
In
and you're gonna do a
basketball,
cross.
sometimes,
There's ways to do that, but again, it's a
2K.
smaller number of people. And in those scenarios, normally there's only like two, you know, or if you have like 3 forwards or whatever, so you don't have that many. It's not the whole team that you're telling what to do.
And there's only like 2 things. It's either cut or come set a pick.
Yeah, or yeah,
And that's kind of that's for basketball, I guess. But you know, there's very limited options for what they even can do. Whereas in an RPG, it's like there's so many different things.
How do you take all of that level of control you get in a turn-based game and the exciting action elements of an action game and combine them? Heon's position is that can't be done without sacrificing what makes this side or the other what it is and why it's great. And my position is that is true, but let's find a new set of goals in the center, a new way of testing the player. That our goal is not to give you total control over every single thing, or strictly to test your singular person's like combat skill in terms of, you know, let's find a new mode or a new skill to try and teach the player that involves some of both things. I think that can still be a really great battle system.
I think this whole discussion is actually why I've determined I really enjoy strategy RPGs more than any other form of RPG. I really, really like Final Fantasy Tactics. I love Final Fantasy Tactics Advance. I really like XCOM.
Yeah,
cool. XCOM's awesome in the sense that the position of your guys is important. It matters, and it affects the context.
Like a pirate ship game that was similar to that as well? I can't remember what that was called. It was about 6-7 years ago.
There was a pirate game. It was
it was like boats.
Pirates, I think.
Yeah, so it was
I can't remember if they had a turn-based part though or not.
Oh, it may not have been turn-based, but it was like an RTS kind of more. Wasn't it?
That game was weird. I forgot. But like in XCOM, your guys here, they're this close to the enemy. It's going to affect how much damage they can do, and there's a lot more strategy than just strictly anything turn-based. I would love to see like if Final Fantasy 15 was an SRPG. You know what I mean?
Could
like,
implement something like that.
Yeah, you wouldn't lose the significance of all your people or anything like Fire Emblem. But like XCOM, I really, really like because there's like a really wide variety of what each of your guys can do. And similar Fire Emblem style, they die, they're dead, they're gone. You know what I mean? I think most strategy RPGs tend to include permadeath because it makes it more important for you to use good strategy rather than just beasting through, which affects the story if there's an important character in there. Yeah, and Rainbow Six uses permadeath as well. I think that's the only thing that incentivizes actually stopping and thinking about what you're doing for people ultimately. You know what I mean? Is like that there's a massive consequence for it. Otherwise, like in a turn-based system, you can just like spam whatever attacks and go grind, and get strong, and then go fight most bosses and do okay against them
without the strategy.
Yeah. So like there's less emphasis on within the battling thing that you're doing. Where strategy RPGs, it's all about in the battle. It's also why I love Civilization 5, and I'm really stoked for Civ 6 coming out in October because. Again, it's turn-based battles, but really, you had your turn, but it's so much more about resource management, the economy, and everything, and positioning. Again, the terrain affects how successful you're going to be, and all kinds of different like factors. So, like to me personally, I think the RPG battle systems I have enjoyed the most have all been strategy RPGs.
In my head, this all comes back to freaking Battalion Wars.
Yeah.
The only problem is Battalion Wars was just like an okay game.
Yeah.
Like, it did most of the things that we're talking about here that we're wanting in a game. But the problem is, it just wasn't all that great.
So how was
it? It did everything we're talking about.
Yeah, so that's kind of where Heon's point. He brought this up too. Is it have these hybrid systems not worked because the game design is bad, or because it just simply isn't possible to get the best of both worlds? And I actually am very interested in playing Battalion Wars now that you're mentioning that, because I'd like to see how that was done.
Yeah, it may not have been executed the way you'd think, but it is the concepts that we're talking about here.
Yeah, I think it's just flow. What puts somebody in flow is what always works for a game. You know, that's what they ultimately go with. Where's the flow? And if it's not where your gameplay mechanics are, I don't care what your theories are or everything. It's not putting people in flow. It's not worth it. The difficulty curve is way too high, so people can't get into flow. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like that's ultimately the most important thing. That's the psychology of video games. All hinges on that point. And if no one's found a way to maintain flow with that complex of an action battle system, then it seriously might not be possible.
Yeah.
The closest thing for me has been Secret of Mana and Seiken Densetsu 3. Aside again from the one point of pausing the battles for constantly doing magic. I usually tend to go melee classes in that game to avoid that. But being able to switch to a different party member, having access to all of your abilities in an action style combat, that's the closest thing for me. And if Seiken Densetsu 3 had a stronger story, I am confident that would be my favorite game of all time, not like Chrono Trigger, right? But if there's just a way to make selecting magic a little faster and done in real time rather than in pausing the system, like having you be able to scroll through it with RNL or whatever, I think that would help. But I actually just played last night. I played Terra Enigma for First Look. I was recording some of that and I streamed that. And again, this is only controlling one character, which is how most action RPGs succeed. You're just in control of one person. But just the feel of that combat, if you could get like the response or what do you call it, like how quickly it responds to your inputs.
Latency?
Latency or input response. For those of you who have played Terra Enigma and Seiken Densetsu 3, you'll know what I mean. Like the latency and like how quickly you can perform your actions in Terra Enigma. And you can move while attacking. Whenever you actually do an attack in Seiken Densetsu 3, you stop moving. Like, he pauses for a moment, attacks, and then you can move again. In Terra Enigma, you can move and attack at the same time. If you can get that kind of movement and response from Terra Enigma into Seiken Densetsu 3 with a real-time scroll wheel for spells, and allow me to switch to the characters.
And make a better
That's
story.
the best game ever. That's the best game ever for me. That's what I'm looking for. And so that's more or less kind of like
I gotcha.
where I'm at in terms of like the perfect kind of gameplay for me. But that hasn't been made yet, right?
Right.
So what about you, Case? RPG battle systems that you've played, what's your favorite system?
My favorite system? I mean, I just love the traditional system. I hate random encounters. Get that out of the way right away. Random encounters are the worst. Being able to see your enemies. You know, the Tales games. Tales of Symphonia and Tales of Fantasia.
Yeah.
That's like my ideal battle system. And it's similar to like Kingdom Hearts and these other games. But it's a little more RPG. It's a little more... I mean, not necessarily turn-based because you kind of do whatever you want, but I do like being able to avoid enemy attacks. Whereas in the traditional turn-based system, you just have to take
damage. Yeah.
You just have to do it. But I do like being able to avoid attacks as well as reposition myself and all that stuff. So the Tales games, Tales of Symphonia, it was weird. The battle system got a little too flashy, and everyone was always shouting their catchphrases all the time, and that just bugged me. But it's a solid system, so that would probably be my favorite. Cool. And I do love how you see the enemies as they come, but you don't see exactly what it is. It's like this weird blob.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, something's coming, and you can avoid it, And then, or you can attack it, and then you find out what it is.
And that's in Persona 4 Golden. That's what they do as well.
That's cool.
They're blobby monsters. And if you attack them from behind, then you can
get
advantage. And if they attack you before you hit them with your weapon, then they get the first strike. Get it. So,
even if you're facing them?
Even if you're facing
them. Doesn't matter?
Yeah, if they hit you first. Because you can swing your weapon as you're running around. Yeah, so you've got to like strike them with it.
That's cool. That's cool.
Kind of interesting.
Okay, so that was a very long conversation about RPG battle systems. Hopefully we've gone into sufficient depth there. Maybe I'm still going to make a video on it, but I think I've talked about everything I was going to talk about in the video. Anyways. Next topic is from Mel Ariza. If you could pick one game from your childhood to be remastered or have a remake of, which game would you choose and why?
Okay, I know exactly what I would go with. I want, and I know that this sort of has already happened, but I want Banjo-Kazooie, Banjo-Tooie in the same game that I can play where the secrets in Banjo-Kazooie actually were unlocked by Banjo-Tooie. Because they always had those secret jigsaw pieces
you couldn't get them.
Yeah, and it was like, well, in Banjo-Tooie. They were always alluding to Banjo-Tooie in that game, which I'm realizing now is kind of presumptuous. But
they knew they had a hit. They knew you'd play the secret.
But, dude, I freaking loved Banjo-Kazooie. I loved it. So I want some version. I don't even care if the graphics are better. I just want them both combined into just the same huge game.
Into the same game.
That would be sweet.
That would be.
It would also be very cool if they did update like models and textures, though.
That would be plus.
Gave it like a really nice aesthetic, not like the Banjo-Kazooie Xbox 360 one. I didn't.
That's what
I didn't like the look of that.
Yeah, not into that stuff. That's what I would say.
I have a hard time with this because my initial thought is I start going down my favorite games list. Yeah. I'm like, hey, start going down. Mario RPG. Actually, I don't want that remade. That game's perfect. If it was remade, I don't even know how you'd do that. I don't know.
It would almost end up being the same thing anyway.
Exactly. I don't trust anyone. It's a great game. So then I go down. I'm like, okay, what about like Final Fantasy VII? Well, people want a remake of that. That's sweet.
Then they are doing it. So.
They're doing it.
Whether we want it or not.
You can have your wish fulfilled if that's the one.
Yeah, and of course, it's not just the question. Wouldn't just be pick a game to be remastered, but also how it gets remastered. Like, not just, remaster it and then do whatever you want with it. It's like, no, I want it remastered this certain way. And perhaps Final Fantasy VII may not be doing that. And so...
Yeah, because
I don't know.
Speaking about battle systems,
do that myself.
Final Fantasy VII is trying to be this hybrid of the two.
It appears to be,
so it's not going to be the original game we played.
Because there are parts of the game, and correct me if I'm wrong, I haven't played this game in a while, but there's at least, even on Disc 1, there's a part where the whole party kind of splits up, and you control, you kind of choose who goes where, right? You send two people one place, and then you... go with like 3
I'm trying to think. That happens
at the very end of the game, the last dungeon. You do.
Well, I'm not
in 6. You do that
necessarily.
But in Final Fantasy 7, you can like say there's like branching paths in the last dungeon, and you send Barrett and whoever.
Oh, I remember that.
And they collect different treasures, and you meet up again at the end.
Man, I'm thinking of something else, but it may be. I don't remember what it was, but I remember I sent Tifa and Aerith away because I was a 12-year-old and I.
Was it when you split up at like the Golden Saucer or something? And
gosh,
there are parts where
there's a lot of split up, but not to fight.
But you don't control them as they fight without Cloud, right? Cloud is always there when you fight. Is that correct?
Cloud is always in the party,
okay,
and you have to choose 2 other slots, and then other people. Yeah, well, that's true. When you leave Midgar, you choose who goes into your party, basically, and you can choose Barrett and Red 13, and you can send Tifa and Aerith away.
Yeah.
And they go away, but it's just
but
more
you
or less,
don't ever fight as them.
Yeah, you don't switch parties.
Okay.
You're always Cloud's party.
I was gonna say that would be cool if you did, because then it would make it so you have to control different people in Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Oh, I see. You're a party that doesn't include Cloud somehow.
Oh, I got it. Mario Strikers. If Mario Strikers was made again, make it a slightly bigger roster, maybe like 7 people on each team. And have it be a really interactive 3D as opposed to just a side-scrolling thing. Of course, that would be hard online, but you could still do it online. So you could still do multiplayer if you just did online, but local would be kind of hard. But Mario Strikers would be super cool if they just made it again and more immersive, more 3D, more you control the camera and all that stuff. That'd be sick.
Nice. Mario Strikers is a sweet game.
What a good game.
I
have a hard time.
This is a very hard question to answer because I actually feel like the aesthetic of the NES and SNES is really, really great. I don't feel like it needs to be updated. The one console generation that I feel like doesn't age well and doesn't look good is the PlayStation 1 and the N64. Those games are the kinds of games where, like, when I hear about a remaster, let's say like the Zelda remasters on the 3DS of Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, I was all over those. You know, and I've been very critical in the past about remasters, but it's generally for games that were on PS3 that are now getting remastered on PS4. That to me is silly. Not silly because, and there's a very legitimate argument to be made that what if you didn't have that game on the PS3? What if you didn't have a PS3 at all, but you got a PS4 and you missed out on this game? Having it
and
available,
a PS5 and a PS6,
having
it to remake the game every
having these games available on the PS4 is very good. Yes, I would prefer it if it was backwards compatible and you could just play the PS3 games on the PS4.
There you go.
But anyways,
problem solved.
You know,
they don't make as much money that way though. So.
Yeah, it's about one half of it is about a cash grab, and that's what I'm criticizing. The other half of it is about accessibility, and that's fine. I'm not against accessibility. I'm not against you spending your money however you want to. You do whatever you want. I don't care. But I'm just saying, when it comes to remasters, I think that the PS1 and N64 era need it quite a bit more than any other console generation. So I would probably pick something from that era, but I wouldn't pick any Final Fantasy games because I love those games, and I think they're fine the way they are, and they look great. Like, I'm playing Xenogears right now for a review, and I think that game, I think the game looks amazing, man. Like, I love it.
They did a good job.
There's this whole scene in Kislev, you know, this attack from the Gebler, and it shows the city, and there's the big spotlights, and it's like an aerial battle, and they're like crashing into the city, and you see like all the lights in the districts go dark. Like, it was all very rudimentary, polygonal models that I guess any modern gamer or somebody who's playing, you know, who's just getting into gaming now, a young kid would look at that and be like, that looks like crap. But to me, there's so much like artistic like creativity in the way that they were able to pull off these like big epic moments with such like limited tools, and that part of it to me is very enjoyable. And so I still really think those games look amazing even today. But, you know, at the same time, it would be really cool to see something on the level of a PS4 game recreating that scene from Xenogears.
At least high resolution. At least, like, up there.
But see, I almost feel like I would rather see it in the way that it was, because I just appreciate so much what they were able to do with what they had. And then all of a sudden you deck it out and make it this, like, amazing looking thing. It's like, I don't know. There's something lost there for me.
If you don't have a CRT, those look actually in some ways worse.
They look worse. Yeah.
A lot of the older games, especially with the pixel art, it's kind of interesting.
But I guess if I were to pick any game that I would want to be remastered, see, I'd want to find something that felt limited, that like it didn't achieve like it wanted to on its original hardware, and that's a hard case to find, because what first comes to mind, like you were saying, all the games that I love the most, and those did. The reason they were good is because they achieved or overachieved on their hardware. So I'm trying to think of something maybe I was disappointed
Shenmue couldn't quite do what the hardware.
Yeah, I didn't love that game by any means. I think it was overambitious for sure.
But on today's hardware,
maybe it could be better. Geez, I keep thinking of games I like.
So Mike wants to just remaster the whole N64 catalog. That's the game he wants to remaster.
Yeah.
Those are the games that do look
necessarily, but...
And that's the funniest thing. Like, when I think of a remaster of Mario RPG, I'm like, fetch that. Like, I don't even want that. Like, Mario RPG's fine. I've never in my time wanted that game to look different than it does. However, I have wanted other games. Final Fantasy VII... maybe more so because of like the boundaries. Like, you don't know where you can and can't go. Yeah. That's a problem for that game.
Oh,
it could use updated textures in that sense.
I just thought of one.
And that you can actually tell.
Mm-hmm. I want the first Witcher to be remastered. Mm-hmm. And I want it to play like The Witcher 3.
Not like
I want
crap.
I want to play that story, and I want to get all of that, because I've been through the game, about 10 hours of the game, and it's really hard for me to stick with it. But I would like to have that story delivered in something more akin to the modern console version, which is The Witcher 3. That's the game I would choose for remaster, for sure.
Nice.
Sweet. Okay, Young Cream had the question, which characters and worlds would you like to see most in Kingdom Hearts 3? I would love to see Star Wars, but that'll never happen.
Why wouldn't it happen?
Because Disney's deals,
things.
like with even Disney Infinity,
Disney
they had to
Infinity
work through
couldn't
some
quite-
loopholes where they were toys representative of the characters to even get them in the same game. They actually have like contractual crap that keeps their like Marvel, Star Wars, and regular Disney stuff from just purely interacting in their first
Really?
universe. Yes, they do. Yeah, so
That's so disappointing, because that's
Well, it's funny 'cause
basically
they're-
what I would say.
There isn't even like Pixar worlds in
Yeah.
these Kingdom Hearts games, and that was another company that was acquired by Disney that maybe has some weird.
That's too bad, because I would say a Star Wars world would be awesome. A Marvel world would be awesome. So there you go. And Pixar worlds would be awesome. There you go. That's what I would want to see, and I'm not going to see it, so fetch that.
I still think it's possible, but it's
Disney's
quite.
lawyers screwing over their own company.
I know they had no idea what they do. What you doing? So it is a possibility, but it's something that Disney would have to finagle in order to get it to work, and they just shut down Disney Infinity, and the company then laid off all the staff. So it doesn't seem like that's something they're willing to.
I'm blown away.
In that case,
weasel around.
I have to head towards Square Enix worlds. So,
that if they move towards more Square Enix stuff,
it would be cool to see Chrono Trigger. It would be cool to see, it would never happen, but like Secret of Mana or something like that.
Yeah, man, I'm one of those.
Like, use those worlds, use those to your advantage, I guess.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool.
Trend more that way than towards Disney, and all of a sudden I get a lot more interested, I think.
Right, because that's kind of what the idea was when it was first being made, was that it's got a lot of original stuff in it now, but it was supposed to be this Final Fantasy hybrid of Disney, but it's like 80% Disney.
Wait a minute, there's no in Kingdom Hearts they haven't gone anywhere near Dragon Quest stuff then, have they?
No, I don't believe so.
That would be interesting.
They did slightly Dream Drop Distance was going towards, and I'm forgetting what it's called. Not Nobuo.
The
Tetsuya
World Ends With
Nomura's The World Ends With You.
Ah, right.
They put that in there, which is, I think,
but that's the
the
least...
first or one of the first times where they took not Final Fantasy or Disney or the original stuff and put a new game into it. So it is possible.
Here's the thing. I just don't want to visit the same Disney worlds again.
You don't want to go to Winnie the Pooh again.
Go to Little Mermaid and do the
Little
dance.
Mermaid again. Go to
Dance
Cinderella
mini
again.
games.
Beauty and the Beast again. Like, fetch.
You know what, though? I do have to say, at least for a couple of those worlds, like Aladdin and a few others, or Lion King, I do want to go back to those worlds because they're freaking cool, and those are like Sora's like friends with those dudes, and so it's like, oh, go back and visit your friends kind of thing.
Go back and collect
But
them.
I don't know what the story would be.
Collect them so that you can have
worlds.
more than just Donald and Goofy. Then you have Tarzan, and he can go with you to fetching.
See, if they
Chrono
could come
Trigger.
with you, that defeats the whole idea of Kingdom Hearts, though. You're trying to keep all the worlds separated.
Oh.
But
Sorry, I'm a Kingdom Hearts I'm a casual. I'm sorry.
well, because the problem is, oh my gosh, all these worlds are connected. Fetching Maleficent is going around dominating everything, but of course she's a puppet for some other dude.
So Kingdom Hearts is very
But-
isolationist. in its
Yeah,
world
they're like,
approach
no,
to
you
diplomacy.
seal the worlds. That's what you keep. Like, you lock the world, and now nobody can go to it.
They're not
But,
multiculturalist. That's very Japanese. Actually.
It's true. It is kind of funny, and that's why. Well, I don't know. I don't want to give away the ending of any of the games, but
Yeah, I'd like to see more Square worlds.
That would be cool.
It would be very cool to
Yeah.
see a Mana world or one of the Chrono worlds, whether it's Cross or Chrono Trigger.
or heck, I mean, the Final Fantasy 15. They could. I think they would
That'd
be
be
interested
crazy.
in doing some cross
That would
promotional
be
stuff.
pretty nuts.
And they,
That'd be crazy
put,
as
some,
fetch.
put Kingsglaive into Kingdom Hearts.
See,
Because Kingdom Hearts
Justice
always ends up
Monsters 5.
changing the
Justice
stories.
What I think doesn't work about that is that a lot of those Square worlds, they have like more, I don't know, like they have like darker thematic content.
Yes, yeah. They
And so like I think that might trend a little too far into like
However,
death and
Pirates
that
of
They've
the
got Cloud and
Caribbean-
Sephiroth, though, right?
they do have those characters, yeah. But Pirates of the Caribbean was in Kingdom Hearts 2, which
That's
I was
true.
very surprised by. Because that's a pretty, I don't know, like they changed a lot. Like when Will jumps up to the edge of the boat and the captain's like, "Hey, give me the gold chain or whatever," and he holds the gun to himself and he says, "I'll kill myself because what you really want is my blood." And they're like, "No, don't do it." Well, in the game Kingdom Hearts 2, they recreate that scene, and I think in the Japanese version he does hold the gun to himself, but in the English localized version, he's just holding the gun. He's not pointing it at his own head or anything.
He's like, I'll jump in.
So
See, that's
they
where
are
I'm
sensitive
thinking,
to that.
That's where
at
I'm
least to
thinking
some
that
extent.
they don't want to have anything above. Because what are they rated? Are they rated E? All the
I
Kingdom
believe
Hearts
they
games.
are.
I don't think they want to move to a T, and I think that a lot of
And those are PG-13.
the thematic content of a lot of those other Square games. I mean, they're not that
You
they're
can-
T.
you can
I think
water
Chrono
them down,
Trigger's E,
though.
and I think is it? I think Chrono Trigger's E and Secret of Mana is E.
But
But I think in their sort of simplistic SNES form, you can do that. But when you try to
More
more
realistic,
realistically
yeah.
represent what's happening, there's a freaking monster alien who destroys the entire planet in the year 1999. You know what I mean? Like realistically representing that is a little bit would trend to T.
violent. But they do kind of, because what they end up doing is they replace all the bad guys with Heartless anyways. So it's like, even if they did a Final Fantasy 15 thing, they would just change the whole story of 15, and now it's actually the Heartless and Xehanort that's controlling. He's the real bad guy, and you end up just fighting Heartless. And so, I don't know. They could still do it because they end up watering down
just
the
to use
stories
like
a
the
lot.
different setting.
Oh yeah, that's good though. Square Enix worlds, that'd be
That's
nice.
what I would like to see.
That'd be hard.
Well, what I'd really like to see is Star Wars, but whatever.
Freaking Disney.
It's like slight chance, but
Because imagine the gummy ship levels if they were like Star
oh my
Wars themed,
fetch,
dude.
yeah, that'd be sweet.
Like Millennium Falcon fetch.
They might be able to. I don't know. There might be like a summon or something that like is a Star Wars.
Only if it's representative of a toy and not the actual
Exactly, it won't be the
character or
actual
whatever
thing.
the loophole was.
All right, Nothing really wants to know, are there any scenes in video games that stood out as powerful to you?
Of course.
there's
Otherwise,
many,
We've had some really
we
good
wouldn't be here.
suggested questions lately. I've got to give it to you, man. 'Cause
Oh,
I think
totally.
we've had a question from
Nothing really on
in,
every-
like almost every podcast
Yeah.
going back
Yeah.
a ways. So
He's beasting it
High
with the
five.
questions.
You know, the reason we're here is because video games are powerful. They're in many instances, they're as good as film or books at giving you emotions and at being powerful, right? So there are absolutely.
There are a ton.
I would go. Okay, there's just too many. Aerith and Sephiroth, that whole thing. If you haven't played the game,
that whole deal.
the whole deal about halfway
that
through. That's pretty heartbreaking.
Poor Sephiroth.
Exactly. Sephiroth didn't stand a chance. Aerith just dropped down and just ran through.
That's freaking funny. So, the Nibelheim incident scene really struck a chord with me when I played Final Fantasy VII for the first time. And every time I play it, I still get chills. Which is why I got so pissed off when they tinkered with it in Crisis Core.
In Crisis Core, yeah.
With adding Genesis in there. Just like, oh, fetch you. Why did you do that? Like,
Yeah.
this is my favorite scene in any video game, probably ever. And you just completely fetch it. Anyways, if it's not obvious, I have problems with Crisis Core, but I still like it. I just wish they
It's a good game.
they hadn't fetched with the things that I cared about the most. And I wish they had... Okay, talking about... Because this is... Okay, I'm going off on a little tangent here. I'm not going to go way into it. I'm not going to totally steer us off course. But last week we talked about... in Kingsglaive, trying to do too many things with too many characters. Crisis Core, another great example of that. Focus on the most interesting stuff. Sephiroth and Zack. Make their relationship the mentor-student relationship. You have a really great character people already care about, would like more depth. And instead, you just ignore that fetcher, and you add a bunch of other people who suck. Anyways,
The Zack and Aerith storyline there
that was
the
good.
best part
That
of
was
Crisis
good.
Core.
That was a good thing to focus on, because
And
that
you-
needed depth. Because they allude to that in 7, they never
Yeah.
got into it in a deep way. Good choices there. And then you have Sephiroth, and he's just like not in the game most of the time. And when he comes around, he's just like, I'm the nicest dude ever. And then all of a sudden, I'm not anymore. And it's like, well, that's
kill
what I
all
want to
of you.
understand. I want to understand how you go from this to this, man. Do that. Make that your story. Anyways. The Nibelheim incident in Final Fantasy VII itself, not in any other retelling, except for that anime version. What was that called?
Oh, not before.
Last Order, I think it
was.
Was
that it?
It was just like a
Blu-ray
half-hour anime
on the Advent Children Blu-ray.
Really great. They did a good job with it in that too. So that telling, and the thing that's so weird about these retellings is that they get the scene where Cloud.
It's
spoilers.
It's weird.
The scene where Cloud gets stabbed, and when he stabs Sephiroth, it's a little different in almost every retelling.
Yeah, I've noticed that.
And so I'd like them to just definitively say, like, how it happened. Anyways,
like
but I like the Last Order version because Sephiroth stabs him and then holds him out over like a drop.
That is crazy.
And when he pulls the sword into him, he comes back onto the platform again. He like pulls himself off of the edge and comes back to standing back on the platform, and then lifts him up on the sword and throws him in. So that's my favorite version of that part. But that scene, I think, is probably of all the games I've played, like the one that like hit me the most and like really got me invested in the story and everything like that. Like I liked Final Fantasy VII, all the Midgar stuff leading up to that, but it wasn't like my favorite game ever. I was like, this is fun. And then when I saw that scene, I was like, okay, now I've got to finish this and figure out what happened here. That was like the crux of my motivation to play through the game, was to figure out what happened in that scene. That scene impacted me so much that like I gotta find out what really happened there, and that kind of led to me it being one of my favorite games. That scene was so effective for me, basically.
My favorite scene in a game is, and I've talked about this a bunch of times, but the ending to Bastion. And that game, it's possible to have different endings, and so it's just the ending that I happen to get. But and I think one of the reasons is that game totally nailed like the themes they were going for. They hit on the head, and the music is phenomenal in that game. And music is really crucial to like eliciting emotions.
Yeah.
And the music in that game does such a great job of that. So that would have to be it for me. The ending scene for the game Bastion.
You know, I would go with the end of Wind Waker.
Wind Waker's ending is really great.
Very good. And very powerful, especially as like, well, gosh, we're talking about the ending of games. That just happens to be the most emotional part of a lot of games, is the way that they end. But yeah, Link and I guess I shouldn't even say what happens. But the ending of it beyond just like the, Ganon fight or anything, the actual, kind of outside island and his grandma and him waving and all that stuff. It's powerful.
It's good stuff, man.
Yeah, that reminds me of the first time we beat Ocarina of Time. And it's like this isn't a spoiler. The cliche video game ending where it's like, here's all the people that you met and like hung out with. But for me, like at that point in time, it was like, oh yeah, that guy.
When it's the first time you see it, it's very effective. And then when you see it done over and over again, it's like, oh, that's
like,
just
like every Mario game ends with the parade, and it's so. Yeah, I don't know. It's okay, I guess.
I dug that at the time, but.
All right, that's it for this week.
Comes to mind.
Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching our podcast, listening to our podcast. Yeah. Thanks for watching our videos. If you've never seen our videos before, I don't have any metric for measuring how many people are listening to this podcast that do not know.
Yeah, there's ways to do that, and we might need to do that moving forward.
Yeah, we might.
But if you are one of those people, okay, here's the test. If you're one of the people who found our podcast, you've never watched any of our YouTube videos before, go to Dark Pixel Gaming on YouTube and comment, I'm an audio-only person. Right. Now I'm gonna binge watch all your videos. Comment those exact words.
Thumbs up.
And then I can gauge how many of you there are out there.
There you go.
Even if there's just one, I'd be super surprised.
Oh, absolutely, me too.
But if there is at least one, I'd love to know who you are. And I'd like to know what your opinion is of our reviews on YouTube.
Yeah. Tell us your whole story. All right.
Anyways,
great.
This Dark Pixel Gaming and Dark Pixel is our filmmaking stuff. You can go to those places to watch more stuff. And leave a comment if you have a topic you'd like us to discuss next week. We'll have a lot more to talk about next week with the PS Neo announcement tomorrow. So we'll probably be tweeting about that and stuff. But
yeah.
Anyway, see you guys again soon. Peace
See you
out.
guys.
Peace.